Welcome, weary traveler. Tonight, we journey through the foggy fields of medieval madness, where swords clashed, kingdoms crumbled, and body counts soared so high you'd think someone was just making numbers up. But don't worry, this isn't your average history lesson. This is bedtime history. Slow, sleepy, and just absurd enough to make you giggle before you drift off. From the snowy slaughter of Towton to the plague-ridden pillow fights of Constantinople, we'll explore the most exaggerated, misunderstood, and downright ridiculous death tolls in medieval history. So, fluff your pillow, dim the torchlight, and prepare for a lullaby of lunacy. Because nothing says sweet dreams like a monk miscounting corpses while sipping suspiciously strong wine. And hey, if you enjoy falling asleep to tales of chaos and questionable math, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that little bell so you never miss a midnight massacre. From which kingdom or couch are you watching us tonight? Drop your location in the comments below. Whether you're tuning in from Lisbon or a lonely tower in Transylvania, we want to know where our sleepy army gathers. Now, let's begin. Medieval chroniclers weren't statisticians. They were storytellers, scribes, and occasionally gossip mongers with a flair for exaggeration. Their job wasn't to count bodies, it was to make battles sound epic, divine, and worthy of retelling over a tankard of ale. If 500 knights died, they'd round it up to 5,000. If a village was raided, they'd claim it was laid waste, even if the only casualty was a goat named Bernard. If a king sneezed during battle, it was a sign from God. If he tripped over a rock, it was a divine test. If he lost, well, the chronicler probably worked for the other side. Medieval math, a sleepy science. Let's be clear, medieval people weren't bad at math. They just had different priorities. Counting exact casualties wasn't one of them. No standardized census. Most kingdoms didn't know how many people lived in them, let alone how many died in a skirmish. No battlefield audits. After a battle, no one walked around with a clipboard saying, "Excuse me, sir, are you dead?" No incentive for honesty. Inflated numbers made victories sound grander and defeats more tragic. It was all about the narrative. Some historians believe chroniclers added zeros for dramatic effect. Others believe they just fell asleep mid-count. The sleepy sword effect. Here's the real kicker. The more dramatic the battle, the more likely the numbers are nonsense. It's what we call the sleepy sword effect, a phenomenon where the fog of war, poor record keeping, and medieval flair combine to produce wildly unreliable death tolls. Examples include Towton, 1461, allegedly 28,000 dead, but snow, chaos, and sheep suggest otherwise. Baghdad, 1258, Mongols allegedly killed 200,000, or maybe 20,000, or maybe just the guy who spilled the ink. Jerusalem, 1099, Crusaders claimed they killed everyone, but someone had to write that down. So clearly, not everyone. Tangent, the lost boot. Theory. One popular theory among sleepy historians is that many medieval battles were miscounted due to the lost boot effect, where soldiers spent more time looking for their footwear than fighting. Sir Snooze-a-Lot, for example, missed 3 major battles because he was stuck in a puddle trying to retrieve his left boot, which had mysteriously migrated to France. Towton wasn't just a battle, it was a blizzardy brawl. Imagine thousands of armored men slipping on icy fields, swinging swords with frozen fingers, and yelling things like, "For York," or "For Lancaster," or "For the love of wool, where's my helmet?" Date, March 29th, 1461, Palm Sunday, because why not ruin a religious holiday? Location: Towton, Yorkshire. Weather: snowy, windy, and perfect for losing your dignity in a mud puddle. Brother Ionicus, our sleepy chronicler, described the battlefield as a frosty field of fury, where boots vanished and tempers froze. The battle: chaos in slow motion. The Yorkists, led by Edward IV, faced off against the Lancastrians, who were probably just trying to stay warm. The fighting lasted for hours, with swords clashing, arrows flying, and knights slipping like toddlers on a skating rink. Alleged death toll: 28,000. Actual death toll: somewhere between a lot and we stopped counting after lunch. Most common injury: frostbite and bruised egos. Sir Snooze-a-Lot reportedly missed the entire battle because he mistook a sheep for a messenger and followed it into a ditch. The math problem: let's talk numbers. 28,000 dead. That's a lot, especially considering the population of England at the time was barely enough to fill a modern football stadium. So how did they count? Method 1, guesswork. Method 2, eyewitness accounts from people who were hiding behind trees. Method 3, dramatic flair from chroniclers who wanted to impress their patrons. Mots. One monk claimed he saw rivers of blood. Another claimed he saw a goose wearing a helmet. Both were probably hallucinating. Tangent: the Great Boot Shortage. Towton is also famous for the Great Boot Shortage of 1461, where dozens of knights reportedly lost their footwear in the mud. Some historians believe this contributed to the high casualty count, not because they died, but because they couldn't run away fast enough. Lady May, watching from a nearby tower, allegedly said, "This is why I wear slippers." Final thoughts: Towton may have been a brutal battle, but it's also a perfect example of medieval exaggeration. Snow, swords, and storytelling collided to create a death toll that historians still debate. Was it really 28,000? Or was it just a really bad day with really dramatic chroniclers? Born as Temujin, raised in the harsh steppes of Mongolia, and destined to become the world's most terrifying spreadsheet entry. By the time he was done, he'd united the Mongol tribes, built the largest contiguous empire in history, and made medieval statisticians cry into their scrolls. Reign: 1206, 1227. Hobbies: horse riding, empire building, casual annihilation. Favorite quote: if you're afraid, don't do it. If you're doing it, don't be afraid. Least favorite activity: peace treaties. Brother Ionicus once described Genghis as a man who rode like the wind and counted corpses like confetti. The infamous body count. Let's talk numbers. Historians estimate that Genghis Khan and his successors may have caused the deaths of 40 million people. That's not a typo. That's a medieval mic drop. Baghdad, 1258. Allegedly, 200,000 dead in one siege. Nishapur, 1221. One chronicler claimed 1.7 million were killed. Khwarazm Empire, basically erased from the map. Entire villages wiped out because someone insulted a Mongol horse. But here's the sleepy twist. These numbers are probably exaggerated, massively. Medieval chroniclers loved drama, and Mongol scribes weren't exactly known for their restraint. One scribe claimed the rivers ran red for 7 days. Another claimed the rivers ran out of ink. Both were probably metaphorical or drunk. Mongol math: the cozy chaos. How did they count the dead? They didn't. They guessed. Or they used poetic license. Or they just made it up to impress their Khan. Method 1, everyone died. Method 2, Everyone except the goats. Method 3. We lost count after the third bonfire. Sir Snooze-a-lot, who accidentally wandered into a Mongol camp while looking for a bakery, reported that the death toll was somewhere between a lot and way too many. Tangent, horse hygiene, and empire. Efficiency. One reason the Mongols were so effective? Their horses. Fast, sturdy, and surprisingly clean. Mongol warriors could ride for days without stopping, thanks to a diet of fermented mare's milk and sheer stubbornness. Lady May once remarked, "If I had a horse like that, I'd conquer brunch." Final thoughts. Genghis Khan's body count is legendary, but also suspiciously round. Was it really 40 million? Or was it just a medieval flex? Either way, it's the kind of statistic that makes you blink, yawn, and slowly drift into dreams of galloping spreadsheets. Because in the end, history isn't about numbers, it's about stories. And Genghis Khan's story is one of epic conquest, questionable math, and horses that probably deserved a vacation. Between 1096 and 1291, European Christians launched military campaigns to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. The result? A chaotic blend of pilgrimage, plunder, and population reduction. Number of crusades, officially 9, unofficially too many participants. Knights, peasants, kings, and one goose, allegedly. Goal: reclaim Jerusalem, earn salvation, loot everything not nailed down. Actual outcome: death, debt, and a lot of confused camels. Brother Jonikus described the First Crusade as a spiritual journey with a body count. Sister Meg called it a medieval Black Friday, but with swords. The First Crusade, a bloody debut. Launched in 1096, the First Crusade was a theological fever dream. Tens of thousands marched east, many without armor, maps, or basic hygiene. By the time they reached Jerusalem, in 1099, they were starving, sunburned, and spiritually caffeinated. Siege of Jerusalem. Estimated 40,000 dead casualties. Muslims, Jews, Christians, cats. No one was safe aftermath. Crusaders celebrated by bathing in blood. Literally, one chronicler claimed the streets ran with blood up to the ankles. Another said up to the bridles of horses. A third said up to my bedtime. Crusader math. Divine, but dodgy medieval chroniclers loved exaggeration. Death tolls were inflated like royal egos. Some claimed hundreds of thousands died in single battles. Others just rounded up to the nearest apocalypse. Method 1. Count the corpses, then double it. Method 2. Count the survivors. Subtract from infinity. Method 3. Everyone died except the guy riding this Sir Snooze-a-lot, who accidentally joined the crusade while chasing a runaway cheese wheel, estimated the death toll as more than a jousting tournament, less than a plague. Tangent. Crusader fashion and foot odor. Crusaders wore chainmail, tunics, and sandals that screamed, "I haven't bathed since Easter." Their armor was heavy. Their feet were tragic. And their fashion sense was somewhere between holy warrior and lost tourist. Lady May once said, "If salvation smells like this, I'll take my chances." Final thoughts. The Crusades were a theological roller coaster, with a body count that defied logic, mercy, and basic arithmetic. Whether you see them as holy wars or medieval chaos, one thing's clear: nobody packed enough snacks. Between 1347 and 1351, the bubonic plague swept across Europe, Asia, and North Africa like a very determined ghost with a grudge. It was caused by Yersinia pestis, a bacterium carried by fleas who rode rats like medieval Uber drivers. Symptoms: fever, vomiting, black boils, existential dread, transmission, fleas, rats, humans, everyone. Cure, none. Just vibes and prayer. Medical advice. Avoid bad smells and sinful thoughts. Brother Yonicus wrote, "The plague came like a thief in the night, but louder and with more sneezing." Sister May added, "I told you rats were shady." The body count. A grim guest list. Historians estimate that the Black Death killed 200 million people worldwide. Europe alone lost 30 to 60% of its population. That's not a typo. That's a medieval mic drop with a rat-shaped shadow. Florence, lost 50,000 out of 100,000. Paris, corpses piled so high they ran out of priests' London. Dug mass graves so deep they hit Roman ruins. Villages, entire communities vanished overnight. One chronicler claimed the dead outnumbered the living. Another claimed the living were just pretending. Plague math, guesswork, and gloom. Medieval plague math was less about precision and more about panic. Death tolls were estimated by counting how many people weren't screaming anymore. Method 1, count the bells ringing. Method 2, count the rats still looking smug. Method 3, everyone died except the guy writing this Sir Snooze-a-lot, who survived by hiding in a wine barrel for 6 months. Estimated the death toll as a lot, plus some more. Tangent. Medieval PPE and fashion faux pas. To protect themselves, plague doctors wore long robes, gloves, and terrifying bird-like masks stuffed with herbs. They looked like goth flamingos with a pharmacy addiction. Plague doctor mask. Designed to filter bad air. Actual effectiveness. 0 fashion score. 10/10 for drama. 0/10 for survival. Lady May once said, "If I saw that mask coming toward me, I'd die of fright before the plague even arrived." Final thoughts. The Black Death wasn't just a pandemic. It was a medieval mood swing. It reshaped society, collapsed economies, and made rats the accidental villains of bedtime history. But it also gave us one undeniable truth. Never underestimate a flea with ambition. Vlad III ruled Wallachia off and on between 1448 and 1476. He was known for his ruthless tactics, love of sharp sticks, and general disdain for anyone who looked at him funny. His nickname, Tsepesh, the Impaler, wasn't metaphorical. It was marketing. Full name, Vlad III. Dracula. Hobbies, impaling, brooding, dramatic landscaping. Enemies, Ottomans, nobles, anyone who didn't RSVP. Favorite quote, "Let them come. I have stakes." Brother Yonicus described Vlad as a man of sharp wit and sharper furniture. Lady May added, he really needed a hug, or a hobby. The Impalement Olympics Vlad's signature move was impalement, driving a sharpened stake through a person's body and leaving them upright like a very disturbing garden gnome. He allegedly impaled 20,000 Ottoman soldiers in one campaign. Some say he once created a forest of impaled corpses outside his capital to scare off invaders. It worked. Estimated body count, 40,000, 100,000, most famous scene. Dinner among the impaled least popular tourist attraction. The Impalement Grove. Sir Snooze-a-lot, who accidentally wandered into Vlad's territory while chasing a butterfly, described the scene as unsettling, but oddly symmetrical. Vlad math. Fear-based accounting. Vlad didn't keep neat records. He let the stakes do the talking. Chroniclers often exaggerated his kill counts to emphasize his cruelty or to justify their own side's failures. Method 1. Count the stakes. Method 2. Count the survivors, if any. Method 3. Just assume everyone died, for one scribe claimed Vlad impaled 10,000 in a single day. Another claimed he impaled time itself. Tangent, medieval interior design, Impaler edition. Vlad's castle was allegedly filled with torture devices, gloomy tapestries, and the occasional impaled guest. His aesthetic, Gothic chic meets don't touch anything, lighting, torches and trauma, furniture, mostly functional, occasionally fatal, ambience. Is that screaming or just the wind? Lady May once said, if I wanted to dine with corpses, I'd visit my in-laws. Vlad the Impaler's body count may be exaggerated, but his reputation is carved in history. Literally, whether he was a misunderstood ruler or a medieval horror show. One thing's certain, he knew how to make a point. Repeatedly, between 1337 and 1453, England and France engaged in a war so long, it outlived most of its original participants, several hairstyles, and at least 3 generations of confused peasants. The 100 Years' War wasn't eat or tea just a military conflict. It was a medieval soap opera with swords. What was it about? Technically, it was about who should rule France. But emotionally, it was about pride, land, wool, and the inability to let things go. England's claim, we have a legitimate right to the French throne. France's response, you have a funny accent, go home. Peasants' opinion, can we not? Brother Jonikus described it as a war of succession, obsession, and occasional digestion. Lady May added, they could have solved this with a bake-off. The body count, a century of casualties. Because the war spanned over 100 years, the death toll is hard to pin down. Battles were scattered, sieges were slow, and plagues kept interrupting the schedule. Estimated deaths, hundreds of thousands, including civilians. Major battles, Crécy, Poitiers, Agincourt, most common cause of death, arrows, disease, and boredom. Sir Snoozelot reportedly fought in 5 battles, slept through 3, and once mistook a French goose for a spy. 100 Years math, medieval timekeeping. Despite the name, the war lasted 116 years, because of course it did. Medieval math was more about vibes than precision. Start, 1337, end, 1453. Number of actual fighting years, maybe 30. Number of truces, treaties, and let's take a break moments. Too many to count. One chronicler claimed the war ended in 1430. Another said it was still going in 1470. A third said, I stopped keeping track after my 3rd wife. Tangent. Knightly fashion and battlefield drama. Knights wore armor so heavy, they needed cranes to mount horses. Their helmets had a poor visibility. Their codpieces were ambitious, and their battlefield etiquette was somewhere between chivalrous and chaotic. Armor weight, 40-60 pounds. Battlefield visibility, like looking through a mailbox slot. Most common. Complaint, I can't feel my legs. Lady May once said, if I wanted to watch men clank around and yell, I'd attend a royal dinner. Final thoughts. The 100 Years' War wasn't one long battle. It was a series of medieval mood swings. It gave us legendary moments, like the rise of Joan of Arc and the longbow's debut, but it also gave us decades of confusion, exhaustion, and questionable decision-making. It was the end of an empire, the beginning of a new one, and the moment Europe collectively said, wait, the Romans were still around. In 1453, the Byzantine Empire, once the eastern half of Rome's glory, finally collapsed under the weight of cannons, politics, and a very determined 21-year-old named Mehmed II. Constantinople, the jewel of the East, had survived centuries of sieges, but this time, the walls blinked. The setup, a city on life support. By the mid-15th century, Constantinople was more museum than metropolis. Its population had shrunk, its treasury was a joke, and its defenses were impressive but aging, like a knight in full armor trying to fight off drones. Byzantine Empire, technically still alive, spiritually already a ghost city population. 50,000, plus pigeons. Mood. We've seen worse. Probably. Brother Yonicus described it as a city held together by prayer, nostalgia, and duct tape. The Ottoman flex enter Mehmed II, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, who had a vision. Take the city, rename it, and make it the center of the world. He brought a massive army, 80,000 troops, a giant cannon, so big it needed 60 oxen to move. A vibe. This is happening, Lady May said. He brought a cannon the size of a cottage. Subtlety was not invited. Siege drama. 53 days of stress. The siege began in April 1453. The Byzantines held out with courage, desperation, and a few borrowed ships. But the Ottomans had numbers, firepower, and a cannon that could make walls cry. Siege length, 53 days. Final breach, May 29th, 1453. Most iconic moment. The last emperor, Constantine XIII, reportedly died sword in hand. Refusing to flee, Sir Snooze-a-lot claimed he slept through the cannon fire, but woke up when someone stepped on his foot. Tangent. Coffee and the Ottoman after-party. After the city fell, the Ottomans didn't just conquer, they curated. Constantinople became Istanbul, a cultural powerhouse. And yes, coffee culture began to bloom soon after. Coffee arrival. Mid-15th century, Ottoman cafe. Vibe, intellectuals, poets, and gossip. Most popular order. Something strong enough to forget the siege. Lady May once said, they lost an empire but gained espresso. Fair trade. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the medieval era and the beginning of something new. It was tragic, transformative, and oddly caffeinated. The Byzantine Empire may have crumbled, but its legacy brewed on in architecture, religion, and the world's first coffee houses. He crowned himself emperor, built a cathedral shaped like a bonfire, and once killed his own son in a fit of rage. Ivan IV wasn't just terrible. He was aggressively theatrical. Born in 1530, Ivan IV of Russia had a childhood that could only be described as trauma with a tiara. Orphaned young, raised by scheming nobles, and surrounded by betrayal, Ivan grew up with trust issues, a flair for drama, and a deep love of architecture that looked like candy. The rise. From boy prince to self-crowned Tsar. At age 16, Ivan declared himself Tsar of all Rus, inventing the title and setting the tone for centuries of Russian autocracy. It was like saying, I'm not just king, I'm the vibe. Coronation year, 1547. New title, Tsar from Caesar. Mood, I'm in charge now. Everyone else can cry. Brother Yonicus noted, he crowned himself with more ceremony than a royal wedding and less emotional stability than a toddler with a sword. The good years, reforms and renaissance. Believe it or not, Ivan started strong. He reformed laws, centralized power, and even created a standing army. He built St. Basil's Cathedral, which looks like a birthday cake designed by a fever dream. Achievements, legal reforms, printing press, military upgrades, architectural legacy. St. Basil's Cathedral, still iconic. Most common reaction, wait, is he good now? Lady May said. He was briefly competent, like a storm that pauses to compliment your shoes. The terrible turn, paranoia, torture, and the oprichnina. Then came the breakdown. Ivan's beloved wife died, and he snapped like a brittle breadstick. He created the oprichnina, a secret police force that wore black robes, rode black horses, and made medieval Russia feel like a horror movie. Oprichniki motto: we're here to purge and panic. Favorite activities: executions, confiscations, dramatic entrances. Ivan's vibe: everyone's a traitor, except my dog. Sir Snooze-a-Lot claimed he joined the Oprichniki for the robes, stayed for the existential dread. The Sun Incident, a royal family feud. In 1581, Ivan got into a heated argument with his son and heir. The result? Ivan struck him with his staff, and the young prince died. Russia collectively gasped, then quietly updated its succession plans. Casualty: Ivan Ivanovich, his son. Cause: rage, impulse, and poor conflict resolution. Aftermath: national mourning, awkward silence. Lady May whispered, he invented the royal tantrum. Shakespeare would have loved him. Final thoughts: Ivan the Terrible was a paradox, brilliant and brutal, visionary and vicious. He shaped Russia's future while unraveling his own sanity. His reign was a masterclass in how unchecked power turns into historical horror, and how even terrifying rulers still want to be loved. It began with one woman dancing in the street. It ended with dozens collapsing from exhaustion and medieval doctors prescribing more dancing. Welcome to the world's weirdest cardio class. In July 1518, the city of Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, was struck by a bizarre epidemic. People began dancing uncontrollably. No music, no party, just frantic, involuntary boogieing that lasted for days, sometimes weeks. It was like TikTok, but with more plague and fewer filters. The first dancer, Frau Trophäa. It started with one woman, Frau Trophäa, who stepped into the street and began dancing. She didn't stop, not after hours, not after days. And soon, others joined her. Initial victim, Frau Trophäa. Date, July 1518. Location, Strasbourg, Alsace. Mood, I can't stop, send help, or a tambourine. Brother Jonikus wrote, she danced with the fury of 10 weddings and the despair of one tax audit. Medieval diagnosis, hot blood and bad moons doctors at the time believed the cause was hot blood or overheated humors. Their prescription? More dancing. They hired musicians and cleared space in the town square because obviously, if someone's dancing to death, the solution is a live band. Medical advice: let them dance it out. Churches take divine punishment or demonic possession. Actual cause: possibly mass hysteria, ergot poisoning, or stress-induced psychosis. Lady May said, it was either a fungal infection or a collective breakdown. Either way, the choreography was tragic. The body count, death by dance. Reports vary, but some say dozens died from exhaustion, heart attack, or stroke. The dancing lasted for weeks, and the city was left bewildered, sweaty, and slightly traumatized. Estimated deaths, 15,100. Duration, water 1 month. Most common cause of death, dancing too hard. Sir Snooze-a-Lot tried to join in, but fell asleep mid-shuffle. Tangent, medieval entertainment and the limits of fun. In a world without Netflix, medieval folks found entertainment in festivals, puppet shows, and occasionally spontaneous outbreaks of dance-induced chaos. The dancing plague was a reminder that even joy can turn terrifying when taken too far. Popular pastimes: jousting, feasting, plague avoidance. Least popular pastime: uncontrollable dancing, most confused profession. Town musicians suddenly booked for a medical emergency. Lady May mused, it was the only time in history where dancing was both the symptom and the cure. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's strangest unsolved mysteries. Was it stress? Was it fungus? Was it the medieval version of a flash mob gone rogue? No one knows. But one thing's certain: Strasbourg learned that sometimes even joy can be exhausting. The late Pope Formosus had made enemies during his reign. His successor, Pope Stephen VI, decided that death wasn't enough punishment. So he exhumed Formosus' body, propped it up on a throne, and held a formal trial known as the Synodus Horrenda, the Cadaver Synod. Year 897, AD location, Rome defendant, Pope Formosus, deceased. Charges: perjury, illegally assuming office, general papal misbehavior. Brother Ionicus whispered, the courtroom smelled of incense, old grudges, and mild rot. The trial: a corpse in the witness box. Formosus' corpse was dressed in full papal regalia and assigned a deacon to speak on his behalf. The deacon's job? Defend a decomposing pope while trying not to faint. Defense strategy: he's dead. Please stop. Stephen's mood: justice must be served, even if it smells funny. Audience reaction: equal parts horror, confusion, and morbid curiosity. Lady May said, it was less a trial and more a medieval puppet show with theological consequences. The verdict: guilty, obviously. Unsurprisingly, the dead pope was found guilty. His papal acts were annulled, his fingers of blessing were chopped off, and his body was thrown into the Tiber River because apparently medieval Rome didn't believe in subtlety. Punishment: stripped of titles, mutilated, dumped. Symbolism: maximum drama, minimum dignity. Public mood: that escalated quickly. Sir Snoozelot claimed he attended the trial, but slept through the sentencing. I woke up when they started sawing fingers. The aftermath: backlash and regret. The spectacle horrified Rome. Pope Stephen VI was imprisoned and later strangled. Formosus' body was recovered and reburied with honors. Future popes condemned the trial, and the church quietly agreed. No more corpse litigation. Stephen's fate: imprisoned, executed. Formosus' fate: reburied, posthumously vindicated. Church's lesson: let sleeping popes lie. Lady May sighed. It was the only courtroom drama where rigor mortis was a legal complication. The Cadaver Synod was a grotesque blend of politics, paranoia, and papal theater. It reminds us that medieval history wasn't just brutal, it was bizarre. And sometimes, the dead had more drama than the living. In most places, political disputes end in shouting. In Prague, they end with someone being hurled out a window. Repeatedly. Defenestration means the act of throwing someone out of a window. And in Prague, it wasn't just a one-time thing, it was a tradition. If you were a noble, a bureaucrat, or just standing too close to a casement during a heated debate, you were at risk of becoming airborne. The first defenestration, 1419, it began with a priest, a rock, and a very angry mob. Hussite reformers, fed up with corruption and religious oppression, stormed Prague's new town hall. When the town council refused to release imprisoned Hussites, the mob responded by yeeting 7 officials out the window. Date: July 30th, 1419. Victims: 7 town council members. Landing strategy, none. Survivors, technically 0. The fall was fatal. Brother Jonikus wrote, "They fell with the grace of bureaucratic paperwork and the speed of divine judgment." The second defenestration, 1618. Nearly 200 years later, Prague did it again. This time, Protestant nobles hurled 2 Catholic governors and their secretary out of a 3rd-story window at Prague Castle. The victims survived, thanks to a pile of manure. Yes, history's most fragrant safety net. Date, May 23rd, 1618. Victims, 2 governors, 1 secretary. Height, 21 meters, 70 feet. Survival mechanism, dung heap. Lady May said, "They landed in manure and immediately declared it divine intervention. I call it dumb luck." The fallout, war, chaos, and more. Flying officials. The second defenestration triggered the 30 Years' War, one of Europe's bloodiest conflicts. So yes, a window toss led to decades of carnage. Prague's windows became symbols of rebellion, and nobles started installing extra locks or moving their meetings to basements. War triggered 30 Years' War. Casualties. War. 8 million moral of the story. Don't argue near windows in Prague. Sir Snoozelot claimed he once fell out of a window during a tavern debate. It was about soup. I regret nothing. Tangent. Medieval conflict resolution. Techniques. While Prague favored defenestration, other cities had their own methods. Florence, poison and poetry. London, beheadings and passive-aggressive letters. Paris, riots, pamphlets, and dramatic sighing, Lady May mused. Prague skipped the politics and went straight to physics. The defenestrations of Prague weren't just acts of violence. They were statements, loud, airborne statements. They remind us that medieval politics were messy, theatrical, and occasionally airborne, and that sometimes history hinges on manure. In the 18th century, England's elite decided that regular parties were too tame, so they created secret societies where they could drink, blaspheme, and pretend to summon demons, all while wearing robes and quoting Latin badly. The founder, Sir Francis Dashwood. Dashwood was a politician, prankster, and part-time pagan. He founded the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wykeham, later known as the Hellfire Club. Their motto, "Do what thou wilt." Their vibe, "Let's offend everyone." Founded, 1746. Location, Medmenham Abbey, later West Wykeham Caves. Membership, nobles, poets, politicians, including rumored appearances by Benjamin Franklin. Brother Jonikus described Dashwood as a man who wore monk robes to mock religion and drank wine like it was a spiritual calling. Rituals and revelry, Gothic nonsense. The club's meetings were theatrical. Members dressed as monks, held mock masses, and toasted to the devil. They dined lavishly, drank excessively, and allegedly invited nuns, red courtesans, to join the festivities. Activities, satirical rituals, drinking contests, scandalous roleplay, decor, skulls, candles, Latin graffiti. Most common phrase, "Is this sacrilegious enough?" Lady May said it was like Halloween for aristocrats with unresolved daddy issues. The philosophy, libertinism, and satire. Despite the drama, the club wasn't truly satanic. It was satirical. Members mocked religion, politics, and morality, using shock value as a form of protest. It was Enlightenment era trolling, with absinthe and powdered wigs. Core belief, freedom from moral restraint, political edge, anti-authoritarian, anti-hypocrisy. Public reaction, outrage, fascination, and rumors galore. Sir Snooze-a-Lot claimed he attended once, mistook a ritual for a nap circle, and woke up wearing a goat mask. Tangent. The West Wycombe Caves. Dashwood later moved the club to a network of man-made caves, complete with chambers named Inferno and Banqueting Hall. It was part party venue, part theatrical set, and entirely extra. Cave length, 400 meters. Purpose, privacy, acoustics, and ambiance. Most haunted room, the inner temple, allegedly used for the spiciest rituals. Lady May whispered, "If you're going to summon fake demons, do it with echo." The Hellfire Club was a fever dream of aristocratic rebellion, equal parts satire, scandal, and spiritual cosplay. It didn't last long, but its legacy lives on in conspiracy theories, gothic novels, and the occasional historical podcast that asks, wait, they did what? In 1346, the Mongols laid siege to a Genoese trading post and, in a moment of tactical horror, began flinging plague-ridden bodies over the walls. Medieval warfare had officially gone feral. Kaffa, modern-day Feodosia, Crimea, was a bustling port city on the Black Sea, run by Italian merchants. It was also the site of one of history's most grotesque military strategies: weaponized disease, because when arrows fail, why not try airborne bubonic doom? The setup: Genoese merchants versus Mongol. Might the Mongol army, led by Jani Beg, had a bone to pick with the Genoese. After a few trade disputes and diplomatic insults, the Mongols surrounded Kaffa and began a siege. But then, plot twist, the Mongol camp was struck by the Black Death. Year, 1346. Location, Kaffa, Crimea. Mongol mood: we're dying. Let's make it contagious. Genoese mood: we're trapped. And now, it smells weird. Brother Yonicus wrote, the air was thick with tension, arrows, and the occasional airborne corpse. The tactic: catapulting plague corpses. As the plague ravaged their ranks, the Mongols allegedly began launching infected bodies over the city walls. It was medieval siege meets horror movie. The Genoese, horrified and helpless, watched as disease literally flew in. Weapon of choice: bubonic plague. Victims' delivery system: catapults. Effectiveness: tragically high. Lady May said, it was the only time in history where trebuchets doubled as biohazard dispensers. The fallout: plague goes global. The Genoese eventually fled by ship, taking the plague with them. As they sailed back to Europe, they unknowingly spread the Black Death across the continent. Within a few years, 25 to 50 million people were dead, all thanks to one siege and some very bad air. Casualties: Europe, 1/3 of the population. Spread from Crimea to Italy, France, England, and beyond. Legacy: the deadliest pandemic in recorded history until modern times. Sir Snooze-a-Lot claimed he once mistook a plague corpse for a picnic blanket. It was a rough lunch. Tangent: medieval hygiene and panic. Medieval cities weren't exactly known for sanitation. Add plague, panic, and poor ventilation, and you've got a recipe for mass hysteria. People blamed everything from bad smells to divine punishment to planetary misalignment. Popular remedies: bloodletting, incense, prayer, screaming. Least effective strategy: let's catapult the problem. Most common reaction: we're doomed, but stylishly. Lady May mused. It was the only war where the enemy's sneeze was more dangerous than their sword. The Siege of Kaffa wasn't just a military event. It was a turning point in global history. It showed how war, trade, and disease could collide in catastrophic ways. And it reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying weapon isn't steel, it's biology. Between 1135 and 1153, England descended into a 20-year identity crisis. The throne was up for grabs, the nobles were exhausted, and peasants just wanted someone to fix the roads. When King Henry the Rest died, his only legitimate son had already drowned in a shipwreck. Awkward. So he named his daughter, Empress Matilda, as heir. But when Henry died, the nobles panicked and crowned Stephen of Blois instead. Thus began a royal tug-of-war that made Game of Thrones look like a polite disagreement. The players, Matilda versus Stephen Empress. Matilda, daughter of Henry I, widow of the Holy Roman Emperor, and not here for nonsense. Stephen of Blois, nephew of Henry I, charming, indecisive, and crowned while Matilda was out of town. England's mood. We're not sure who's in charge, but we're definitely tired. Brother Jonikus wrote, Matilda had the claim, Stephen had the crown, and England had a headache. The war, 20 years of shrugging and stabbing. The conflict wasn't one big battle. It was a slow, miserable grind. Castles changed hands weekly. Nobles switched sides like medieval influencers. Towns were looted, rebuilt, and looted again. It was less epic war and more extended tantrum. Start 1135, end 1153. Casualties, thousands, mostly civilians. Most common. Phrase, who are we fighting for again? Lady May said, it was like watching two toddlers fight over a crown made of cheese. The Siege of Oxford. Matilda's great escape. In 1142, Matilda was trapped in Oxford Castle by Stephen's forces. In a legendary winter escape, she dressed in white, snuck out in the snow, and fled across frozen fields. It was stealth, survival, and sass rolled into one. Disguise, white cloak to blend with snow escape route. Frozen River Thames. Outcome, Matilda lived to fight another day. Sir Snooze-a-Lot claimed he was part of the escape, but fell asleep in a snowdrift. I woke up in spring. Tangent, succession rules, and medieval gender politics. Matilda's claim was strong, but many nobles balked at a female ruler. The idea of a woman on the throne was scandalous, even if she was more competent than half the men in the room. Legal claim, solid public support, wobbly, gender bias, medieval grade. Lady May mused. She had the bloodline, the brains, and the battle scars. But alas, no beard. The resolution, a royal compromise. Eventually, Matilda gave up her claim in favor of her son, Henry Plantagenet. Stephen agreed to name Henry as his heir. And when Stephen died in 1154, Henry became King Henry II, ending the anarchy and starting a new dynasty. Peace Treaty, Treaty of Winchester, 1153. New king, Henry II. England's mood. Finally, can we nap now? Brother Jonikus sighed. It took 20 years, but England remembered how to monarchy. The anarchy was a royal mess. Confused loyalties, endless sieges, and a throne that changed hands like a cursed baton. But it also gave rise to one of England's most powerful dynasties, and proved that even medieval politics could be solved with a little compromise and a lot of exhaustion. In 17th century France, your mustache wasn't just a style, it was a statement. And if someone questioned it, you didn't argue, you dueled, with swords, over grooming. While not a war in the traditional sense, the War of the Whiskers was a cultural clash among French aristocrats that escalated into a flurry of duels, insults, and salon gossip. It was the golden age of grooming, and tempers were as sharp as razors. The setup, Mustaches versus beards versus clean-shaven drama. In Louis XIII's France, facial hair was political. The king preferred a clean-shaven look, but nobles clung to their whiskers like they were family heirlooms. The result? A grooming Cold War, royal preference, smooth cheeks, powdered wigs, noble resistance, mustaches, goatees, and dramatic sideburns. Public mood. We're not sure who's winning, but everyone looks fabulous. Brother Yannicus wrote. The salons were tense, the barbers exhausted, and the mirrors smug. The duels, grooming, gone violent disputes over facial hair etiquette led to actual sword fights. If someone mocked your mustache, you challenged them. If someone trimmed too boldly, you drew steel. It was vanity meets violence. Estimated duels. Hundreds, some fatal, most ridiculous. Most common insult. Your beard is an affront to civilization. Most popular defense. It's a family tradition. Lady Mess said. They died for their sideburns. I respect the commitment, not the logic. Tangent. Barbers as political operatives. Barbers became unexpected power players. They shaped reputations, spread gossip, and occasionally caused diplomatic incidents with a poorly timed trim. Barber roles. Stylist, therapist, spy, most dangerous tool. Scissors, emotionally and politically, least trusted profession. The royal stylist, Sir Snooze-a-lot, once challenged a barber to a duel after receiving asymmetrical stubble. He lost. The duel and the beard. The cultural fallout, fashion, dictates peace. Eventually, Louis XIV, the Sun King, brought stability, not through policy, but through style. His reign standardized fashion, facial hair, and etiquette. The dueling died down, replaced by powdered wigs and passive-aggressive fan flicks. Royal decree, wigs for all facial hair. Trend, out-noble reaction. Fine, but we're keeping the perfume. Lady May whispered. They traded swords for snuff boxes. Progress? The War of the Whiskers was a reminder that in the right or wrong context, even grooming can become a battlefield. It wasn't about body counts. It was about pride, vanity, and the sharp edge of aristocratic absurdity. In 1212, thousands of European children believed they could succeed where knights had failed. Their plan? March to the Holy Land. Their strategy? Faith. Their outcome? Chaos. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was a real historical event, albeit one wrapped in myth, exaggeration, and a whole lot of medieval optimism. The Children's Crusade was less a military campaign and more a tragic parade of misplaced hope. The setup, visions, preachers, and parental confusion. It began with a boy named Stephen of Cloyes, a French shepherd who claimed Jesus gave him a letter to deliver to the king. Somehow, this turned into a movement. Stephen's message: children will succeed where adults failed. Recruitment strategy: preach in villages, promise miracles, parental reaction. You're doing what now? Brother Yannicus wrote, they marched with bread, banners, and blind belief. The pigeons were impressed. The march. Thousands of kids. No plan. All heart estimates vary. But 20,000 to 30,000 children may have joined the march. Some were teens. Some were actual toddlers. They believed the Mediterranean Sea would part for them. Spoiler, it did not. Route, France. Italy. Goal, Jerusalem. Reality, hunger, exhaustion, and shady merchants. Lady Me sighed. They thought faith would float them. History sank them. The twist, ships, slavery, and a very unholy ending. 2 merchants offered to ferry the children to the Holy Land. For free. Generous. Not quite. The ships sailed. Straight to North Africa, where many children were sold into slavery. Ship count, 7. Shipwrecks. 2. Survivors. Few moral compass. Missing Sir Snooze-a-lot muttered. They crusaded into a con. Medieval marketing at its worst. Tangent. Why did this happen? Historians still debate whether it was truly a children-esque crusade or a mix of poor peasants, teens, and religious fervor. Either way, it was a tragic cocktail of faith, desperation, and medieval misinformation. Possible causes: religious zeal, poverty, apocalyptic vibes. Most popular theory: everyone misunderstood everything, least helpful. Advice: just follow the visions, Lady May whispered. They marched with dreams. History marched on. The Children's Crusade is one of those historical moments that feels too surreal to be true. It's a bedtime story soaked in tragedy, innocence, and the kind of misguided hope only the Middle Ages could produce. In 897 AD, Pope Stephen VI dragged his predecessor's rotting body into court, dressed it in papal robes, and held a full-blown trial. The defendant was dead. The verdict was dramatic. The smell? Unholy. The Cadaver Synod, also known as the Synodus Horrenda, is one of the most surreal events in church history. It's the kind of tale that makes you blink twice, clutch your pillow, and whisper, "Wait, they did what?" The setup: Pope versus Pope. One of them deceased. After Pope Formosus died in 896, his successor Stephen VI decided that death wasn't enough punishment. Fueled by political rivalry and a flair for the theatrical, Stephen had Formosus's corpse exhumed, dressed in full papal regalia, and seated on a throne in the Lateran Basilica. Year: 897. AD location: Rome. Defendant: Pope Formosus. Deceased. Charges: perjury, illegally assuming office, general papal misbehavior. Defense strategy: a terrified deacon spoke on behalf of the corpse. Brother Ionicus scribbled, "The courtroom smelled of incense, vengeance, and mild decomposition." The trial: a legal farce with rigor mortis. The trial proceeded as if Formosus were alive. Questions were asked. Accusations were hurled. The deacon nervously responded, while the corpse sat silently, probably wondering why it hadn't been left in peace. Verdict: guilty, obviously. Punishment: all acts annulled, papal vestments stripped, fingers of blessing chopped off. Final destination: first buried, then thrown into the Tiber River, Lady May said. It was less a trial and more a medieval puppet show with theological consequences. Tangent: why did this happen? The Cadaver Synod was driven by politics. Formosus had supported the wrong faction during a power struggle. Stephen VI, aligned with the opposite camp, wanted to erase his rival's legacy. Dramatically. Political context: factions vying for control of the Holy Roman Empire. Symbolism: humiliation, erasure, and papal theater. Public reaction: horror, confusion, and eventual revolt. Sir Snooze-a-lot claimed he attended the trial, but slept through the sentencing. I woke up when they started sawing fingers. The aftermath: backlash and regret. The spectacle horrified Rome. Pope Stephen VI was imprisoned and later strangled. Formosus's body was recovered and reburied with honors. Future popes condemned the trial, and the church quietly agreed. No more corpse litigation. Stephen's fate: imprisoned, executed. Formosus's fate: reburied, posthumously vindicated church's lesson. Let sleeping popes lie, Lady May whispered. It was the only courtroom drama where rigor mortis was a legal complication. The Cadaver Synod wasn't just grotesque. It was a masterclass in medieval absurdity. It reminds us that power, paranoia, and papal politics could combine to produce history's strangest bedtime story, from dancing plagues to airborne corpses, from popes on trial to nobles dueling over mustaches. Medieval history wasn't just brutal, it was bonkers. And somehow, that makes it soothing. Let's take a sleepy stroll back through the chaos. Towton's snowy slaughter reminded us that medieval math was mostly vibes. Genghis Khan's kill count was so high it allegedly cooled the planet. The Crusades proved that divine missions often came with terrible logistics. The Black Death turned rats into global villains and statistics into bedtime horror. Vlad the Impaler showed us that landscaping with corpses is a bold aesthetic. The Hundred Years' War lasted longer than most medieval lifespans, and still no one knew who won. The fall of Constantinople gave us cannons, coffee, and the world's most dramatic door slam. The Cadaver Synod reminded us that even dead popes weren't safe from office politics. The defenestrations of Prague taught us that windows are not neutral ground. The Hellfire Club proved that powdered wigs and pagan rituals make for scandalous sleepovers. The Siege of Kaffa flung plague into history with catapults and poor decision-making. The Anarchy was England's royal shrugfest. The War of the Whiskers turned grooming into mortal combat. The Children's Crusade was a tragic tale of faith, innocence, and medieval miscommunication. The Dancing Plague spun Strasbourg into a rhythm of exhaustion. And finally, the Cadaver Synod circled back to remind us medieval justice was never boring. Why this works as a bedtime story? Because medieval history is the perfect blend of slow pacing, endless sieges, confused monarchs, and dramatic pauses, absurdity, dancing plagues, corpse trials, and beard duels, cozy chaos, enough distance from modern stress to feel safe, but just weird enough to keep your brain gently entertained. Lady May would say, history is best served lukewarm with a side of nonsense. So now, dear listener, as the moon hangs low over the medieval madness, fades into fog, let your mind wander through snow-covered battlefields, candlelit catacombs, and plague-ridden ports. Let the whispers of popes, peasants, and plague doctors lull you into dreams where history is strange, soft, and just a little silly. Close your eyes, forget the body counts, remember the stories, and sleep like a knight who missed the war because he overslept. Good night, traveler of time. May your dreams be historically inaccurate and wonderfully peaceful.